Hello and welcome from all of us here at the You Need Faith in Jesus team. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Psalm 94. We're jumping into a psalm that asks a question that I think every single one of us has felt deep in our bones, especially when we just look at the world around us.
Listen to that. The psalmist just cuts right to the chase with that raw, painful question. It's that feeling, isn't it? When you see injustice just winning the day and all you can do is look up and cry out, "How long, Lord? How long?"
And make no mistake, this is not some old, dusty sentiment from a forgotten book. No, this is an ancient cry that feels like it could have been written this morning. We see it on the news, we feel it in our culture. It's that universal ache when it really, truly seems like God is silent while wickedness is screaming. So how does the psalmist even begin to tackle this huge, agonizing question? Well, it starts with a cry for justice, but it's a very specific kind of cry. It's one that acknowledges right from the start that vengeance belongs to God. The psalmist is literally appealing to the highest court in the universe.
Now listen to the language here. This isn't a cry for personal revenge, like, "God, get him for me." No, this is a formal, legal-sounding appeal. He's calling on God as the rightful judge of all the earth to rise up and do what a judge does. And that repetition, "O God, to whom vengeance belongeth," that's not just for effect. That shows the deep urgency, the absolute desperation he feels.
And right there, that teaches us something so crucial. Our job isn't to take matters into our own hands. It's to bring the case before God in prayer, to trust His perfect righteousness and His perfect timing. It's about learning to hand it over to Him, fully and completely. And what I absolutely love is how this illustrates the incredible consistency of Scripture. What the psalmist cried out in the Old Testament, the Apostle Paul reaffirms word for word in the New Testament. The message is clear from beginning to end. Perfect justice is God's job and God's alone. Okay, so the psalm then makes a shift. It turns its attention from the plea to God and zooms in on the folly of the wicked. And it doesn't just describe what they do, but more importantly, it exposes their deeply flawed thinking, what you could call a kind of practical atheism. Just notice who they're targeting: the most vulnerable people in society, widows, immigrants, orphans, the people who can't defend themselves. And what's the fuel for this horrific cruelty? It's right there in verse 7. This dangerous, arrogant assumption: the Lord won't see it.
This is exactly what practical atheism is. They might not deny God's existence with their lips, but they deny Him with their lives. They live as if He's blind or just doesn't care. And that belief right there is the very root of their evil. It's a really sobering warning for us, isn't it? To always live with the awareness that we are always, always before an all-seeing, holy God.
But now, this is where the psalm makes this powerful turn. The writer stops pleading with God for a moment, and instead, he directly challenges the absurd logic of the wicked. He's about to expose the fatal flaw in their thinking.
He starts with this incredibly simple, common-sense question. Think about it. The one who designed and created the very concept of an ear, is he somehow going to be deaf? It makes no sense.
And he just keeps going with this flawless logic. It's absurd to believe that the Creator somehow lacks the very abilities He gives to His creation. Of course, the one who formed the eye can see. It's an open and shut case.
And then he brings it all to a close with this staggering truth. God's knowledge doesn't just cover our actions. He knows our innermost thoughts. He knows every little scheme and plan, and He sees that compared to His infinite wisdom, they're just empty and like a puff of smoke. The word here is vanity.
And get this very truth is so foundational that centuries later, the Apostle Paul quotes Psalm 94, verse 11 directly in his letter to the Corinthians. He makes the exact same point. All the clever little plans of humanity are completely worthless when they're set against the rock-solid truth of God. Okay, so if the wicked are fools and God is all-knowing, where does that leave the believer who's suffering right in the middle of it all? Well, the psalm now shifts its focus to a really surprising source of peace for God's people: His loving correction. Now, this might sound a little backward at first. The psalmist says the person who is disciplined or chastened by God is blessed. Blessed. Why? Because, he explains, this correction is actually designed to teach us and to give us an inner peace, a rest that stays steady even when the world around us is in chaos. You see, this reveals that God's discipline isn't about punishment, it's about education. It's for our growth. As Hebrews chapter 12 confirms, God disciplines those he loves. It's actually a sign that we're his beloved children. It's his way of shaping us and giving us a deep, profound peace that our circumstances just can't touch.
And this leads to one of the most beautiful, relatable verses in the entire psalm. This is the writer's personal testimony. He says when his mind is just swirling with anxious thoughts, a multitude of them, who can't relate to that? It's God's comforts, and God's comforts alone, that bring true joy and delight to his soul.
And once again, this personal experience in the Old Testament points directly to a core attribute of God's character that's spelled out in the New. God isn't just a God who sometimes offers comfort. No, by his very nature, he is the God of all comfort. It's who he is.
And so all of this builds to the final section. This psalm doesn't end with questions or anxiety. It ends in a triumphant, totally confident declaration of our unshakable refuge. It shows us exactly where our ultimate safety lies. What a powerful conclusion. After all the pain and confusion, the psalmist declares with absolute certainty, "But the Lord is my defense. My God is the rock of my refuge." He is completely sure that God will judge the wicked, and that repetition shall cut them off. Yea, the Lord our God shall cut them off, leaves zero room for doubt. For him, it is a settled fact. So what does this all mean for us right here, right now? Well, the psalm gives us 4 really practical steps. First, hand vengeance over to God. Let it go. Second, receive his correction not as punishment, but as loving discipline. Third, bring that multitude of anxieties to him and find his comfort. And fourth, learn to rest in him as your unshakable refuge. Ultimately, the resounding message of Psalm 94 is one of deep, deep confidence. No matter how things look right now, no matter how long it seems the wicked are winning, our God will have the final say. Period.
And so that leaves us with this final thought to take with us. This isn't just ancient poetry. It's a blueprint for faith in a broken world. So the real question for you and for me is this. Knowing that the judge of all the earth is your personal refuge, how will that change the way you face injustice this week?